Yeah, and that was part of the difficulty. You think about those 3-4 years in Parliament when Parliament was trying to figure out Brexit. That was exactly the problem, was that the debate split very quickly into the no-deal Brexit camp and the second referendum camp, and the centre ground sort of got trampled in between them. Yeah. And that is a kind of what's happening now, is if you start talking about closer relationship with the European Union, you're absolutely right. The Brexiters will scream betrayal, and the rejoiners will say, hang on a sec, there's only one thing we should do, and that's rejoin the European Union. So talking about how to make the best out of Brexit, what sort of relationship with the European Union we can have, not as a member state, but as a state that wants to trade a bit more easily with them, is proving a very, very hard discussion to have.
And I've got Ben Habib joining me later. So he's an advisor to Reform UK, big Brexiteer. I've debated him before. Ben, I hope if you're listening, I hope I'm not. You can tell me if I'm taking your positions out of line, and I'm sure he'll correct me later on. I don't think I am. But people like Ben, people like Nigel Farage, will say that it's not Brexit, the idea, that's the problem. It's in its implementation. And they will point to things like the UK is now set to retain EU safety marks, which is a climb down post Brexit, that the food checks and other things have been delayed to October. And essentially their view is that the Brexit that was dreamed of, the ideal sort of independent, sovereign, free trade Britain, has been betrayed by Parliament. And so it's not Brexit that's the problem, it's in its implementation. Do you give any weight to that argument?
Not particularly, no. I mean, yes, there were some people who wanted a different sort of Brexit to the one we've got. There were some people who wanted a Brexit that was no relationship at all with the European Union, deregulate the UK economy. But actually, if they'd gone out and said that in 2016, they wouldn't have won the referendum. And one of the problems with Brexit is there were lots of different arguments used by the Leave camp. There were some Leavers who said we're going to control immigration, we're going to be in control of immigration but not cut it. There were others who said we're going to be in control of immigration and cut it. One of those groups was going to be upset after the referendum. Mm-hmm. So I think partly because there were so many different arguments used in favour of Brexit, lots of people who voted Brexit are now saying this isn't my Brexit. But the fact of the matter is, for the British people, I think, you voted on a certain prospectus and that hasn't really materialised. And so you can understand why public opinion is drifting in the way it has, because of the sense that, we were promised that everything will be better. We'd have shorter waiting lists in NHS hospitals after Brexit, for instance. Now, part of this is a question of timing. We've had COVID. This is coming on the back of 10, 12 years of austerity. The NHS isn't in a great shape. But you can understand why people are starting to think, hang on, this isn't what we've written on the side of that bus.
Yeah, and also I think on the issue of immigration, so much was made of immigration during the Brexit campaign, when in reality the sort of immigration people were talking about, it wasn't really Brexit. And so now now they're shouting stop the boats, and I think a lot of Brexit voters are Well, go ahead.
Well, what I'd say to that is leave the boats to one side, because that's sort of people desperately coming over here to seek asylum is a different issue. But if you just think about legal immigration, people coming here to work, one of the apparent paradoxes of Brexit is we left the European Union. Lots of people thought we'd left the European Union to cut immigration, and the figures from last year showed the highest ever recorded number of net immigration on record, 600,000 plus. Now, some Brexiters say, well, that's exactly what we wanted. What we wanted was not to stop immigration, but to have a points-based system that let us choose the immigrants we want.
Yes, yeah.
But of course, people like Nigel Farage are saying, no, that's not what I want. I supported Brexit for. I supported Brexit to cut immigration.
Mm-hmm. And so the reality is it's unlikely that the debate improves or moves on, surely, as you're saying we've had the highest net migration figures, so people like Nigel Farage are going to continue to bang that drum. So what I'm going to ask you is something you might not want to do, but I would, if you just take a whack at it, is predict what the next 5 years are going to look like. Are we going to continue going round and round in this debate over Brexit, or are we going to see any tangible difference?
I mean, I think the crucial variable there is the next election. If the Conservatives win the next election, which doesn't look likely at the moment, then I think we're not going to have a debate about Brexit. I think if Labour win the next election, they've said they want a closer relationship with the European Union, then I think this debate will start to spark up, but not least because a large proportion of Labour members are very pro-Remain. And there are a lot of Labour members who are saying, why isn't Keir Starmer being more ambitious in his EU policy? So I think within the Labour Party, and if Labour are in government, that's within the governing party, we'll see that debate start. I don't think we're going to get near talking about whether we should rejoin or anything like that, but I think there's more chance of a serious debate under Labour. And of course, the final thing I'd say is, with each passing year after Brexit, more and more companies are saying this is what it has done to us. So we're no longer talking about forecasts, we're talking about impacts. And I think that changes the debate as well. As you said, a lot of companies are coming out and saying, actually, you know what, this is quite hard. Trading with the European Union is a lot more difficult than it was, and it's causing us problems. So I think that will change things slowly.
And more complex than it was presented, certainly during the referendum. Well, thank you so much. That was Anand Menon, Director of UK in a Changing Europe, who I think actually has put Brexit and the discussions around Brexit more concisely, articulately, and fairly than anyone I've spoken to in a really, really long time. So Anand, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I hope to speak soon. That was Anand Menon, Director of UK in a Changing Europe.